The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, welcome. Excited to see you guys today. Let everybody kind of have a chance to get in and get settled. I'm doing the same here. This is Sandy Reese. It is Project SmartSprout. We're going to start here in just a minute. I did want to do a quick tech check though and make sure that you can see my slides and that you can hear me okay. And if you can, would you just type in the Q&A box and let me know that all is well? Thank you. Okay, thanks. Great. You know, Monique, I always figure if you can hear me all the way in Paris, then we should be good to go with just about everybody else. All right, awesome. Okay, so we're talking today. Let's see. Let me just double check in the recording. Sorry, I have about 3 things I have to do at the beginning of these webinars. I just want to make sure that we do for the recording, the official welcome. This is Project SmartSprout, and today's webinar is creating a written fundraising plan to fuel your success. I find that fundraising plans are kind of like fog or smoke. You can see it, but when you try to grab it, it's elusive. You can't really put your hands on it. Fundraising planning is like that for a lot of people. It's something that a lot of folks know they need, but they don't know where to start, they get a little stuck, they're afraid they don't have the right template, they're afraid they don't have the right information, and it's just a mess. What happens when you do have a plan is that there's a lot more opportunity and you can respond to opportunities faster and you can raise more money. It will keep you out of that crisis du jour mode, and you all know about that. You stay out of the reactivity. I remember being this way early on when I would get to my desk and, you know, it's time to really think about what am I going to do to raise money. And all I could think of was whatever the burning fire was in front of me. You know, oh my gosh, this Rotary Club called and they want to do this benefit pancake breakfast for us. And now I have to get them some information and they need our logo and they need this and they need that. And, it's really, it's a bit distracting. It keeps you from really focusing on what you need to focus on. When you have a plan, you can more easily say no to things that you don't need to be doing so that you stay focused on the things that are going to raise money for your organization. Keeps you out of this. A good plan will minimize the chaos and it will keep you focused on the right things. So that's what I want to do today. I want to show you, in essence, how to create a treasure map. Now, a lot of what I'm going to do is centered around a goal of $100,000. I think for some of you, that's probably a reasonable amount of money to try to go after. If your budget is way more than 100, then you can just scale up what I'm going to show you today, and it will still work. You need to know exactly how much you need to raise. If you haven't already figured that out, that's a really good thing to do. And what you don't want to do is say, oh, we'll just go raise all the money that we can. That doesn't really work because there's no clear finish line. You don't know when you're done. You don't know when you need to turn on the afterburners and really pour on the juice so that you can get where you need to be. It's better if you have an exact number in mind. And the best way to do that is to figure out what service you want to deliver in the coming year, how much that's going to cost, and then figure out if you can go raise that amount of money. And of course, if you've got any kind of fees from your programs or if you've got other earned income, you can subtract that out. But let's say that your programs are going to cost $150,000 for the next year and your organization does some fee for service and that's going to cover $50,000 of it, then you need to go fundraise the other 100,000. And then we have to look and see, is that realistic and is that doable? I find that when you set a goal that's way, way, way too high, there comes a point at which it is laughable. You know, that point where you just kind of roll your eyes and snort and go, yeah, that's not going to happen. So we don't want to go there. And we don't want the goal to be so achievable that you hit it in the first 3 weeks. A little bit of a stretch is a good thing because it'll make you try some new things. It'll make you think differently. Your approach might be a little different. You may have a different strategy. And I think that's a good thing. So that's where we're going with the $100,000 plan. Just keep that in mind. Now, 2 truths of planning before we dig into the good stuff. And by the way, you guys, I have so much good stuff for you today. You are going to want to take some notes throughout this as we go today. Planning is one of my favorite topics. I love teaching this. I've taught this webinar and a variation of this webinar probably dozens of times at this point. I really enjoy doing it. So 2 truths that we're going to start with. Number 1, when you raise more money, you can change more lives. So it doesn't matter if you have an animal rescue you're working with, or it's an after-school program, or it's the arts, or whatever. Your programs are changing lives. You're impacting those you serve in a very positive way. And when you have more money, you can do more of that. Truth number 2, when working from a plan makes fundraising easier. So if you need to raise more money, you definitely want to have a plan, because it's going to keep you from wondering what you should be doing. It's going to keep you from looking at every hot new thing that comes along and thinking, oh, I should be doing that. Oh, we should jump on that. You don't necessarily need to do the latest and greatest thing. You need to do the things that are going to work for you. Your plan's going to keep you focused, again, so that you don't get caught up in the shiny ball syndrome of whatever the latest, newest thing is. Your productivity is going to increase because you're probably working on things that have the greatest return on investment for the time, energy, and money that you're spending on them. And that's really where you want to be. Your confidence is going to go up because you should start to see some wins, and you're going to feel better about that. When you try something and it works, you're going to be like, wow, that's cool. I want to do that again. And a plan's going to give you leverage because you're going to know from looking at the plan where you need a little help, where you could use volunteers, where your board can plug in, things you might outsource, and so forth. So it's just going to help you leverage your time a little bit better. Does that make sense to you, that when you have a plan, all these things are going to happen? Life is going to get easier. You're going to be able to step out of the daily chaos. All right, cool. Without a plan, you're like this poor guy. You're on a wheel and you're going really, really fast, but you're not getting anywhere. And that's a little frustrating. We don't want to do that. All right, so I want to show you 6 steps to putting a simple, successful fundraising plan together. You can write these down. I'm happy to throw the slides into the Facebook group later when we're done, if you want to have access to those. You want to write all this down. Okay, here's the 6 steps at a glance. And by the way, if you want to just do a print screen on this page, you could do that. That's a really easy way to capture everything. Step number 1 is to learn from the past. I'm going to show you what to do if you already have been doing some learning, already have been doing some fundraising. What do you do about that? How do you use that information? Then I'm going to show you how to shine a guiding beacon and set that guiding beacon. Something really cool called an impact goal, and it's really handy for all kinds of things. It's really useful in your messaging, and it's really handy for fundraising. Then we're going to talk about the 3 critical targets your fundraising plan needs to address. I'm going to show you how to put on your super cape and make sure that you're playing to your strengths. In step 5, we get to the nitty-gritty of choosing the right strategies for your plan. And in step 6, you got to write it all down. We're going to talk about templates there and formats and what's the best one. So that's what we're doing. I'm going to go individually into these. Whoops. Step 1, learn from the past. So for those of you who have been doing some fundraising, you want to do a little analysis. So here's where it's really important to have data. You never want to decide what to do in a fundraising plan based on how you feel about it. You want to decide what to do because the data supports your idea. You can look at the historical data for an event you did last year or a grant that you wrote or whatever and see that, yep, that was successful, we need to do it again. So I see this all the time with events. So let's say organizations that have been around 3 or 4 years, 5 or 6 years, 20 years, longer. I usually start by saying, tell me what you're doing to raise money. And they'll start telling me about some event. Okay, great. How long have you been doing this event? Oh, we've been doing this event for years. Okay. Is it still profitable? And they go, what? They're doing that event because they always have. And that's a really bad reason to do anything. You never do something because you always have. You do it because it works. So what you want to be able to do is have a look at the data from the past few years to figure out what's been working. So here's the easiest thing to do. No matter how long your organization's been around, make a list of all the things that you have done to raise money. And then you want to look at how much you made or how much you brought in and how much it cost you so that you can look at the net. So you have the gross amount of money that it generated, the expenses or whatever it cost you, and you subtract that out and it shows you how much you cleared. You need to know that. You need to know extra things like, was it incredibly time intensive? Did it take 1,000 volunteers? Did you have to get special permission from somebody to be able to use the facility? Like, you want to take all that into consideration with every activity that you did. And here's what you do. So you make your list of all those past fundraising activities and you ask yourself these questions. Number one, did you get enough ROI? Well, what's enough ROI? Well, you want to get enough return on investment so that it's worth it. So if you spend $1,000 and you make 1,005, that's not a very good ROI. If you spend $100,000 and you make $200,000, that might be worth it to you. So you want to really think about what ROI is enough. Personally, I like to see about 3 or 4 times at least. So if I'm doing an event and I spend, let's say, $15,000 on that event, I'm hoping that we're going to generate 60 or 75 at least so that we have substantial ROI. Events, I think, are the least profitable of any fundraising activity. And there's actually some research that's been done by the Center of, what is it? Leah may know, she's on here. It's the Center of Philanthropy at Indiana University, I believe is what it is. They've done some research to show what kind of ROI you can expect from various activities, and special events are the least profitable. Direct mail is more profitable. The most profitable, and probably won't surprise you, is face-to-face. So if you can get in front of a donor and you ask them for $10,000 and they say yes, that really didn't cost you a lot other than your time. Events tend to take a lot of money to put them on and pay for everything. So as you look at all the things that you've done in the past, you ask yourself, did we get enough ROI? So if you don't know how much ROI you're looking for in the first place, you got to stop and think about that. What are we looking for? Are we looking for 3 times? Did we get 3 times back what we spent? So that's one way to look at it. If you didn't, then you ask yourself, can it be improved? So let's say you're doing an event and you spent $2,500 on the event and you made $4,000. If that was your first year out, it's not terrible, but you definitely want to look at it and say, okay, is there room for improvement? Is there something we can do to make this better, to make more money or lessen our expenses? Or has this thing run its course and it's done and we need to move on to the next thing? That happens. It happens with events. It happens with all kinds of things. I mean, I think as popular as Giving Tuesday is right now, the day will come when it will have run its course and nobody really does it anymore. Everything goes in cycles. Everything. Nature goes in cycles. Life goes in cycles. Everything does. So just keep that in mind. So this is how you want to start your fundraising plan, is you look at your historical data. No matter how long you've been around, no matter how much fundraising you've done, you look at what you've done. Did you get enough ROI? Can you improve it? Has it run its course? That's how you make your decision about what activities to pull forward into the New Year's plan. When you look at that list of all the things that you've done in the past, then you can decide what you want to keep and bring it forward into this year's plan, what you want to bring forward but it really needs some tweaking, and what you should dump, what it is time to just let go of because it is no longer working. I'm a tweaker. I like to, I don't give up on stuff until I look at it and say, okay, is there a way? Is there a way to tweak this? Is there a way to make it better? Is there a way to add a VIP experience to it? Is there a way to add something to it or to change it some way so that we get what we're looking for from it? To me, that's one of the most fun things that you can do. You have to do all this, and then you can start to think about what you've done in the past that you can bring forward into this year's plan, because you never do something just because you always have. You do it because it works. So that's where you want to start with your fundraising plan, is a historical review. Learn from the past. All right, step 2 is to shine a guiding beacon. Now, what does this mean? Well, let me show you this. Can you see this picture? The picture on the slide is a lighthouse. You guys know what a lighthouse is for? It's meant to keep ships from crashing on the rocks or getting into shallow ground. So when a ship is out, especially if it's foggy or it's stormy and they can't really see where they're going, that lighthouse is going to give them an idea of where they are in relation to the shore. So it's a shining light that guides them and keeps them out of trouble, keeps them from danger. And that's what this is. I want to show you this. This is really fun. It's called an impact goal. Everybody needs an impact goal. And essentially, it's a way to answer this question: what impact will your nonprofit have? So what I encourage you to do is to think about, overall with your organization, what impact do you want to have this year? I'll give you a couple of examples. For an animal shelter, they may say, well, we want to double the number of animals that we save this year. Or maybe for a homeless shelter or an after-school program or some others, you may say, we will eliminate our waiting list. Now, the nice thing about those, either doubling or eliminating, you can count. You can count the number and you know exactly what that is. So if your shelter is saving 1,000 animals, doubling it means 2,000. And we can measure that, which means we know exactly when we've been successful. And we can also start to calculate what it will cost us to do that, what it cost us to do to save 1,000, and we can, kind of project that forward and have an idea of what that will cost. Same thing with eliminating a waiting list. If you know how much it costs to serve somebody now, then if you know how many are on your waiting list, you know how much that's going to cost. Now, what I like about these kinds of goals is that people will get excited about that. And that's real different to say our goal this year is to double the number of fill in the blank that we're doing. That's real different than we need to raise $100,000. In the mind of your donor, they would way rather help you double what you're doing rather than just write you a check so you can reach your goal. Because remember, it's not about you and your goal. It's about the donor being able to participate in something that sets their heart on fire. It is all about your donor. So when you can set an impact goal that it's specific, it's measurable, it's going to happen in the next year, it might be a little bit of a stretch, but it's very, very focused on the program. That is something you can use in your messaging. You can use it for an appeal. You can use it in your speaking gigs, when you're out doing your power talk. There's a lot of places you can use that. And like I said, it's very interesting to donors and prospects. It's way more interesting than you just saying, well, we're just trying to raise we're doing our annual fundraiser and we're just trying to raise $100,000 to fund our budget. Nobody cares about your budget. Okay, is this making sense? You guys are a quiet bunch today. Nope, it's making sense to somebody who is Monique. Yay! Monique's got it. Now, the hard thing for some of you, and Monique, this may be difficult for you, is to try to figure out, what is that goal? What does that look like for you? For those of you who have really varied programs, you may have to take a step back to see, what do all the programs have in common, and try to figure out the impact goal from there. It's not always obvious, and sometimes you need somebody who's outside your organization to help you with that, because you can't see the forest for the trees anymore. So if you do have some questions about your impact goal, you can ask them here today, or the Facebook group is always open, and I'll help you with that. I'm usually pretty good at spotting that and figuring out what that impact goal is. All right, so step number 1 was learn from the past. Step number 2, shine the beacon. And step 3 is to set 3 critical targets. So we're doing a lot of prep work. We're doing a lot of prep work before we jump into actually figuring out your plan. And actually, all these pieces will just flow right into your plan. So there's 3 targets that your fundraising plan needs to address. And if it doesn't, you're going to have problems later. The first one is obvious. The other two are not so obvious. The first one is you need to know how much money you need to raise. I am so surprised always when I talk to people about their fundraising goal and they say, well, I just want to raise more than last year. I'm like, okay, what's more? $1 more, $1,000 more, $1 million more? What are we talking about here? You want to be real specific. And I'm a huge proponent of go figure out what programs and services you want to deliver, figure out exactly what that's going to cost, and then build your fundraising goal off of that instead of, and it's really hard to do when your organization is very small. You don't want to just go out and raise all you can and then figure out how to spend it. That's backwards. So start with a very specific amount that you need to raise. And then you want to think about two things that have to do with your donors. Because remember, this is donor-based fundraising. It is all about your people. It's all about your donors. There is this thing called donor retention. And essentially what it means is if you get a new donor this year, you want to do everything you can to keep them so that they stick around and give again next year. That's part of your big loyal donor base. That's part of what creates the sustainability. And unfortunately, donor retention is not that great. The last numbers that I saw across the board, nationwide, donor retention is at about 47%. That means that if you start the year with 100 donors, you're going to end the year with 47. So where are the other 53 going? You might have some that move away and decide they don't want to support your organization anymore. You might have some that pass away, and unless they leave you in their will, they're going to stop giving. Most people simply go away because they don't think their money is making a difference. They don't think that their little gift matters at all. That you can do something about. You can't change people moving away or passing away, but you can change this. How do you do that? Well, it's all in how you treat people. It's about having that really hot newsletter that we talked about a couple of months ago. It's about the warm touches and making people feel special. It's about having a great thank you letter. It's about everything you do that makes people go, I love that organization, or at least keeps them interested. So in your fundraising plan, you want to think about how many donors you want to renew. And if you don't know what your retention rate is, you need to go figure it out. If you're using a tool like Little Green Light or Bloomerang or Kindful, they have tools within them. Most of them have something you can put on the dashboard of the software that will calculate it for you. So if you're entering all the detail about donations, those softwares that will calculate it for you, and then you don't have to try to figure it out. It's not the easiest thing to calculate, but you want to try to figure out what yours is and renew as many donors as you possibly can. Now, several people that I've worked with who have really small nonprofits, or really young nonprofits, I should say, have grabbed this concept and come back and said to me, oh my gosh, our retention rate is 60% or 65%. I'm like, that's great. And the bigger your donor base gets, the harder it is to keep the number that high. Because when you don't have that many people, it's pretty easy to give them a very personal experience. It's pretty easy to pick up the phone and call just about every donor you have to say thank you. But when your number doubles or triples or quadruples and you get busier, it's a little harder to do that. But you want to keep an eye on it. That's why I include this in here. If you're not paying attention to renewing your donors, you will always be on the hunt for new people. You need to be on the new hunt for new people anyway, just to replace those that are going away. But the more you focus on retention, just the better everything is in the long run. So if renewal is goal critical target number 2, then acquiring new donors is critical target number 3. And what you want to do is figure out how many new donors you need. And this can be calculated. There's an article on the blog, and I'll go find it for you and share it in the Facebook group about how to calculate the number of new donors that you need. This is very cool. I mean, think about it. If you know you need to grow your donor base, and to reach your goals, you need 375 new donors this year, then you're going to figure out strategies to go find 375 new donors this year, right? That is so much easier than just saying, oh, well, we need as many new donors as we can find. Because I'm here to tell you what's going to happen if your goal is we'll just go find as many as we can. Yeah, that's not going to happen. You'll get busy with other things and you'll forget. and make myself a note. I'll go find that article, how to calculate number of donors you need. Okay, so your plan needs to address these 3 critical targets. And what that means is when we start looking at strategies, you want to make sure that you've got strategies and you've got activities in place that are going to not only help you raise the dollars you need, but are going to be an opportunity for donors to renew and also opportunities for you to bring new donors into the family. And as you pick your strategies, you're going to ask yourself, how will this strategy help me reach all 3 of these targets? All right, step 4, as we're continuing to do preparation for putting the whole plan together, is to put on your super cape. Da-da-da, just like this. Isn't that awesome? So that's me and Maggie. A friend of mine has a teenage son that is an amazing artist, and he drew this for me. I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome because a 16-year-old kid drew that. He's very talented. Your super cape is your strengths. What are you really, really good at? You don't want to try to do things that are so far outside your comfort zone that you're not going to do them. So, for example, I'm a big believer in public speaking. I think it's a great way to spread the word, and it's a great way to find new donors. But if you are terrified of public speaking, that may not be the way that you want to go. We may want to find you something a little bit different to do, or find somebody else in your organization who can go out and do the speaking. You may want to leave that to somebody else who's more comfortable. So another example would be if you are not a great writer and you want to make sure you're getting getting a good newsletter out, or maybe you want to blog but you're not a great writer, you need to find somebody who can help you with that, because what you don't want to do is try to improve that strength and become a good writer, because you won't. Here's the deal with strengths and weaknesses. Strengths are usually gifts that we have, either they're talents, they're spiritual gifts, there's something that we are just inherently good at. You just are. Then you don't really understand how other people are not good at things, right? Some of us are really good at listening, some are really good at problem solving, other people are just really great with technology or numbers. And for those of us who are not good at that, so if your weakness is numbers or technology or something, when you try to improve that, the best you're going to do is move into the mediocre category. You're never going to be good at it. No matter how much you pour into it, you're never going to raise that weakness up into a strength. You just won't. The best you're going to do is be mediocre. So it makes more sense to not work on weaknesses, but get help with that. Find a way to systematize it. Find a way to streamline it. Find a way to outsource it. Get a volunteer. Get an intern. Do something so you don't have to do that. What happens then is you can focus on the things that you're really good at, and you will excel at those things in such a way that you'll be more productive doing more of what you're already good at and not worrying about the weaknesses. I hope that makes sense. So when you're putting your super cape on, you're really owning those things you're good at and knowing that you're going to play to those strengths in your fundraising plan and get help with the stuff you're not great at. Now, the other piece of this with your super cape is to look at what I call organizational assets. Organizational assets are things that your organization has going for it that will make your life easier when it comes to planning and fundraising. Things like name recognition, either for your organization or for you. If a lot of people know you and they trust you, they're going to be more likely to give. Or maybe you have a really strong brand. Maybe your organization has been in the news and people have heard about you. Or maybe you've got a cause that is really broad reaching or well loved. A lot of folks who are doing things with animals, animal welfare, things like that, it's really easy for folks to fall in love with that because they, they're like, oh my gosh, we're gonna be rescuing more animals. That's easy to love. Now, if you're sitting there going like, well, we don't have puppies or kittens, what do you have? Because you've got something. there's something about your organization's cause that has some strength and some grit and some appeal to it. You may just not be able to see it because you're in it every day. Maybe you have a great facility or location, or you've got a big donor base or a big following on Facebook or a lot of volunteers. What do you have to work with? And there's a page in your handout. Let me see if I can flip over to that right quick. Sorry, it took me a minute to find it. There's a page in your handout that has a list that you can start with. Let's see what page is. That's page 5. You can start with page 5 just to kind of go through and check off what do we have going for us that we could utilize. And then you may have left you a couple of blanks at the bottom because you may have something else that you have going for you that would be very appealing to your donors. Okay, let me come back over here. So you want to figure out what your personal strengths are that you can play to, what organizational assets you have, and make sure that when you start brainstorming ideas that you're playing to those. So if you have a facility that's in a really great location and it lends itself well for a tour, you probably ought to be doing some kind of open house. Now, for those of you who don't have a facility, what do you have? Are you in a location like Monique? I'm thinking, like, you got to really play that up being in Paris, and you might want to do more video. You might want to do maybe some Facebook Live of like, well, we're in Paris today, and just taking a walk, by pick a landmark and talk about how your organization benefits from you being there and from students being able to come and do internships or summer programs and that sort of thing. But I think that's something that you could definitely play up. And the rest of you have to kind of look around and see what have you got that you could leverage. Absolutely. So Monique's saying she's doing an International Women's Day event here next year, and Paris is definitely a draw. Absolutely. Absolutely. So leverage that, play it up. All right, step 5, let's get into some nitty gritty. Here's where you want to start choosing your strategies. And by strategy, I mean what thing that you're going to do to raise money. Are you going to write grants? Are you going to do an event? Are you going to have an appeal? Are you going to do online fundraising? Fundraisers where you're selling something to raise money, Giving Tuesday, or maybe all of those things appeal to you. There definitely are right strategies and wrong strategies for your organization. Are there wrong strategies overall? Well, there are strategies that I would never pick because, and that's maybe because I have tried them once upon a time and they were not particularly effective or profitable. But they might be profitable for a different organization. So I think there are right and wrong strategies for your organization. So I can't tell you, here's exactly what you need to do. I'm gonna give you some suggestions. I can give you some guidelines, but then you're gonna have to figure out for your organization, what is our best option? What's our best opportunity? So I got a couple of tips for you. Number 1, keep everything donor focused. It is all about your donor. Remember, it's not about you. It's not about what you want and your needs. It's about what the donors are going to get excited about. And you have to think sometimes. I mean, some of you are going like, yeah, but we've got these programs and we need to fund these programs. Okay, so look at those programs and find the sex appeal to your donor. What about your program is going to appeal to a prospect or a donor? And I guarantee you there's something. You just have to go look for it and find it. When you do that, you're going to be able to go to your donors and offer them an opportunity to participate in a way that sets their heart on fire. And that's what this is all about. Remember, your donors are like the goose that laid the golden egg. You want to keep the golden eggs coming. You got to appeal to the goose. You got to take care of the goose. You got to give the goose what it wants. And the goose, in this case, what they want to know is, what are you doing that makes a difference and how can I be involved? Okay. Now, let me couple that with one more thing. So hang on to that thought for a minute as we start thinking about the right strategies. I want to tell you about 2 types of fundraising. And then we'll loop this back to the goose and the golden egg. So there's 2 kinds of fundraising out there. There's transactional fundraising and there's transformational fundraising. And to explain this, we're going to talk about Girl Scout cookies. Now, I am not knocking Girl Scout cookies. I love me some Samoas just as well as the next person. I have been the troop leader, the Girl Scout mom, the cookie mom. I've sold cookies. I've eaten lots of cookies. I've done it all with Girl Scout cookies. But here's the deal. If you're sitting out in front of the grocery store and you're selling cookies, people that walk by are buying cookies. The fact that it benefits the girls is probably not why they're buying cookies. If they want to benefit the girls, they'll just walk up to one of the girls or the mom and they'll just say, here's $5. I want to make a donation. They'll do that. But they're usually buying the cookies because they like the cookies, because they want the Thin Mints. They're addicted to the trefoils. They want the cookies. So it's a transaction. You give the girls the money and they give you those cookies that come in those great little single serving boxes. It's a transaction. So you have to be very careful because there's nothing in that transaction that encourages the donor to come back and do it again, except that they really like the cookies. When the cookies are gone, there's no more reason for them to interact with those girls. What you want instead is what we call transformational fundraising. In transformational fundraising, people give because of the way that lives are transformed through your program. They give because they care, not because they're getting anything in return. So here's where you have to be really careful. And a lot of people think, oh, well, we need to offer our donors a mug. Or if they give $25, we need to send them a sticker. We need to send them a bookmark. We need to send them something. No, you don't. You don't want to do that. It's kind of like training a little kid. Have you ever had this experience where maybe anytime you go to a specific store, the kid always says, oh, I want a cookie, or I want a toy, or I want a whatever. And you do it once, and then guess what happens? Every time you go to that store, they're like, oh, mom, can I please have the cookie? Can I please have the toy? And they're just all over you about it because you're training them how to behave. So it's the same thing with your donors. If you start giving them stuff, then they expect stuff. And you really don't want to do that. You want them to give because they love what your organization is doing. Now, if you look in your handouts, I believe that, yes, I did, on, I forget sometimes what I put in these things. All right, on page 7, there is a list of some very typical fundraising activities and whether they are transactional or transformational. So let's look at this for a minute. Anytime you're selling anything, candy bars, candles, calendars, t-shirts, whatever, that is a transaction. Even though somebody might be really excited to get the t-shirt and be able to wear it around town, which is actually not a bad thing because now they're a walking billboard for you, it's still a transaction. They're doing it because they're getting something in return. A walk, a run, a golf tournament, a lot of times dinners or galas, silent auctions, live auctions, these are all transactional in nature because people are getting something in return. Listen, people do not come and play in your golf tournament because they love your organization. They come and play in the golf tournament because they get to get out of work for the afternoon and drive around and drink beer, have some fun. Now, I'm not saying don't do transactional fundraising, but you want to make sure that you have a balance between that and your transformational activities. Transformational fundraising usually looks like some kind of direct appeal, a direct mail, a direct appeal, Giving Tuesday, something like that. Major gifts, where you're cultivating individuals and asking them to support something very specific. Grants are usually transformational because foundations are trying to support something real specific and make some specific change in the world. Monthly giving, matching gifts, those are transformational. So what you want to do as you think about the activities that you want to put in your plan is make sure that there is a balance. And if it goes one way more than the other, it needs to go into transformational more than transactional. So there's nothing wrong with having a walk or a golf tournament or a gala, but you don't want to do a ton of those. I mean, think about that. If you're doing a lot of things where you're selling candy bars, you're selling candles, you got a walk, you got a golf tournament, you're basically just hitting people up for money again and again and again. And as a donor, that feels really crappy. It doesn't feel good. But if what you're doing is you're taking really good care, remember the goose and the golden egg? If you're taking good care of that goose, you're keeping people in the loop, you're sending out your newsletter, and it's really touching people's heart, and then you give people the opportunity to help you make a change and impact somebody's life, they're willing to do that because you've warmed them up properly and they feel really good about it. All right, so there's another worksheet that goes here for you to list all the things that you're thinking about doing this year in your fundraising plan, and then mark whether they're transactional or transformational. And that'll help you really see if you have a balance or not in the things that you want to do this year. All right, let me go back to the slides. For some reason, it didn't go to the right place. Here we go. Okay. Now, for some of you, you may be thinking, all right, I get all that. How do I know what kind of things to put in my plan? What is a good, healthy mix of different kinds of fundraising activities in my plan? Well, if that's your question, I have the answer. So glad you asked. It has to do with my 1-10-1000 rule. Some of you probably heard this before, but I'm going to show you how this works. 1-10-1000 gives you a way to start to structure your activity so that you're not doing too much of one and too little of another. You start with one event. You do a signature fundraising event. Now, some of you have other kinds of events. My animal shelters usually have adoption events and volunteer fairs and all that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about fundraising events where the point of the event is to raise money. Do one a year. Hit it out of the park, give it everything you've got, and then move on to other things. When you do event after event after event, it actually wears people out. It's exhausting, it's too much, and you're going to lose people. So do one event, do it as well as you can, and then move on to the other things. This picture that you see here is from last year. This is the Horsehaven Dancing with the Horses event. Horsehaven used to do several little events, and we started doing this one big event, and it has become a 6-figure event for the organization, which is awesome. We do this one, we head it out of the park, and then we move on. We have a family-friendly event we do in the fall called Boo at the Barn. And Boo at the Barn is really meant to give people the opportunity to come in and mix and mingle with the horses and have fun in a family environment. It's not really meant to be a fundraiser, although it does raise a little money. But it's a different kind of event, and that's perfectly okay. But we're real clear that those are different events. So the one in the 1-10-1000 rule is to have one signature event, do it well, move on. The next is 10 grants. Why 10? Well, because it fits with 1-10-1000. The point here is keep your grant pipeline full. Go and have a look and see what grants you might be eligible for, and go after them. Keep your grant pipeline full. Grants take a while. From the time that you do the research and figure out what your options are to actually writing things and putting them out there and then waiting between the time you submit to the time you hear anything, it can take months, if not a year or more. And so if you're staying on top of that and keeping your finger on the pulse of what opportunities are out there and submitting for those grants, your pipeline is full and you're more likely to have things coming in on the other side. Now, one of the other reasons that I said 10 is we have a couple of grant writers on staff, and actually Leah Holt, one of our grant writers, is here with us today. And Leah does a lot of research. And we usually can find at least 10 foundations that are a good match for a nonprofit. One of the nice things is Leah's been doing this a while, or other grant writers have been doing this a while. I've been doing this a while. And normally when we hear what the mission is for an organization, we can either say, yeah, there's probably some good stuff out there, or, boy, that's really obscure. I'm just not really sure we're going to find anything. So the point here is don't leave grant money on the table. Know what opportunities are out there. Even if your organization is very new, and I know we have some newbies here in SmartSprout, if your organization is a year old or less, it still might be worth doing some initial research to see what's out there and to see what those foundations are requiring. What are they looking for? Because you might need to set up your programs or the data that you're collecting from the programs in a way that will make it very easy in another year or two for you to submit an application for those grants. If they are asking for a lot of detail that you are not now collecting, gives you a really good reason to think about collecting that data in a different way so that you're ready to go after those grants later. Oh, good. Anya says she's doing that now. Perfect. See, that's very smart. Very smart. Okay, so 110, 1,000 rule, 1 signature event, 10 grants. Here's the fun part. Build your donor base to 1,000 donors. Who just had a heart attack? I'm sure some of you just have a heart attack. Okay, here's the deal. And I'll show you the math on this in just a second. If you want to raise $100,000, if you want to have some sustainability with your fundraising, you need a big loyal donor base. You need 1,000 donors. And honestly, when you're starting with, I don't know, maybe 50 or 100 donors now, and you get into the habit of always building and working on donor retention and you're keeping your eye on that, by the time you get to 1,000, it's going to be just part of how you do things. It'll be part of your culture to always be looking for new donors, and it'll start to take on a life of its own, which is very cool. Anne says that's her. She has 21 donors right now, but looking forward to growing it. Awesome. I love that you own that, and own it. You got 21 people who have said with their checkbook, I am behind you. I believe in what you're doing. Let's do this. So what I would encourage you to do, if you're like Anne and you only have 21, double it. That's your first step. Don't worry about 1,000 just yet. Know that that's where you're going, but to go from 21 to 1,000, that can freak you out. So instead of going from 21 to 1,000, go from 21 to 42. Start by doubling it. That's a nice, easy step. And what happens then is when you get to 42, you're going to go, yes, I made it. And then what do you think I'm going to say? Double it again. Go from 42 to 84. Then double it again. And when you keep doing that, you're going to learn so much about how to find new donors and where to find them and what to say to them. And it's going to just become, I don't want to say routine, it'll become a muscle that you know how to use. And you can keep using it. And that's very cool. Even when you get to 1,000 donors, you're going to have to always be looking for new donors, because remember what I mentioned earlier about donor retention. You're always going to lose donors. There's always going to be some that pass away and some that change jobs and can't give anymore, or they move away or whatever. You want to keep as many as you can, and you want to always be looking for more. And I'm telling you, it is magic. The more that you train yourself to look for them, the more that you will. And it just becomes part of how you do things. It's very cool. All right, let me show you the math on this because it's kind of fun. And this is very scalable. So you can move it however you want to. Remember, I started with a goal of $100,000. So let's say you've got a signature event that does $25,000. Now, if that freaks you out, don't worry about it. If you're not quite there to 25,000, then one of the things I would encourage you to do is brainstorm some ideas for increasing the amount that you're raising on your event up to 25,000 from wherever you are. And remember, you can always pop in the Facebook group and say, I'm trying to grow my event from 10,000 to 25. I would love some ideas of how I can do that. That's what that group is there for. Do it and let us jump in and help you. Between Leah and Susan and I, boy, we've done lots and lots of events. And then we've got a lot of other people who are very smart in SmartSprout who can jump in and offer you some guidance as well. So let's say you've got a signature event that's bringing in 25,000. You've got your grant pipeline full. You've got 10 grants that are coming in at about 2,500, and it could be some different combination there. And then you've got your 1,000 donors who are giving $50 each, and maybe that's a one-time $50 gift, or it's two $25 gifts. Anyway, it adds up to 50,000. There's your $100,000 with basically just those three categories of giving. Now, the nice thing is, inside that 1,000 donors, let's say you set up a monthly giving program and people are giving $10 a month. What does that add up to? If somebody's given $10 a month, that's $120 a year. You don't need quite as many donors. So if you jump into monthly giving, which I think is a really good idea, you actually need fewer donors, which is pretty cool. Isn't that nice? That brings that goal down just a little bit. So I'd encourage you to play with this just a little. Play with it and see, based on what you're already doing or what you have available, what are your opportunities? What's possible? Start playing with the strategies and which ones you want to do, and remembering that you want to bring forward strategies you've used before that had a good ROI. You want to choose strategies that play to your strengths. If you're not great with details, you may not want to do an event, because events typically require a lot of detail, or you want to get some help with that. Anne's asking, how important is it to have a big event? Can we just not do one and focus on the other stuff? Well, you can. You can completely skip an event, but here's why you may want to rethink that. Particularly for a young organization, an event can not only bring in money, but a lot of new donors and a lot of awareness. So if you want to also spread the word about your cause, that event can be really helpful for letting people know you're there and what you're doing. I mean, for example, if you were going to reach out to your local TV station, like here in Knoxville, our NBC affiliate has a couple of afternoon shows that are more lifestyle kind of shows. And it's really easy to get on those shows. You can put a press release together about your event and send it to them, and they'll have you come on. You can come on and talk about the event that you're doing and why you're doing it and how people can get involved and all that kind of stuff. It's a little harder to do that sort of thing if you're just wanting to talk about your programs. You can still do it, but it's just a little more difficult. So that one big event can give you all kinds of other benefits in addition to just the money. New donors, awareness. It's an opportunity to bring in some volunteers, and those volunteers can be prospects for people to join your board. And there may be other things. So there is a place for the right event and a well done event. And maybe you don't want to do an event like the one that I just showed you. Maybe your event, it looks different. Maybe it's a smaller event. Maybe it's a more intimate event. There's a lot of ways to do it. One of our members is Christy Wary, who runs an organization called Illuminate India. And Christy and I came up with last year an idea for a virtual event, because she's based in Idaho, works in Calcutta in India. So her donors are literally all over the world. And we said, well, it's going to be hard. And she's already doing an event. She's doing one event in her city. I know I just told you only do one event, and I'm going to tell you Chrissy does too. Well, there's a reason. There's a reason she does too. So we put this virtual event together. That the gist of it is, she picks a day in September, and if you want to participate, you put a team together and you either cook an Indian curry meal at home or you go out for curry, and then collectively as a team you make a donation of $360 to pay for the food and education of one of the kids in her program for the year. So you're eating curry, you're enjoying it with your friends, and then like if you have 10 people, everybody kicks in $36 and you're done and off you go. So we wanted to create an event that people could participate in no matter where they were. There was a couple of different ways to do it. So, you can go out and eat curry, you can stay home and have curry. Either works. And the funny thing is about an event like that, when we just made this up in early 2017. And we put the details together and we were like, all right, let's try this. So we tried it in September last year. So we had it all ready to go, and then there were back-to-back hurricanes. That's when we had Hurricane Texas, a hurricane in Florida, and she and I were like, well, what do we do now? So we pushed it out like a week or two and said, you know what, let's go anyway. And she had, I think, 8 or 9 teams that signed up, and they all raised way more money than the 360. Her goal was 10,000, and she wound up raising 11,000 and something, which was awesome. So that really worked for her. And the nice thing about it is, an event like that, it requires some things on the front end to set up. So she had to set it up on her website and figure out how the teams were going to give their money and how they were going to sign up to be a team. And she put some video together. And so it took some tech stuff on the front end. But then after that, it was just promote it. And the day of the event, she's out eating curry because she didn't have to really do anything, be available to talk about it on Facebook and maybe answer some questions. But there wasn't near as much work as an in-person event. We had no idea when we made that up. Is it going to fly or not? I don't know, but it did, and it was awesome. So you can figure out what's going to work for you. You can play with this math. You can make it work in your favor. Okay, let me go on to step 6, which is probably the most important of the whole thing, and that is write it down. If it's not in writing, it's not real. If your plan is in your head, it's not really a plan, it's an idea. You have an idea of what you want to do, but you haven't committed to anything. Writing it down and putting it in paper is that step of commitment, because that's what makes it real, is when it's in writing. A lot of people get real hung up on format. What template should I use? Does it need to be in Word? Should it be in Excel? What does this need to look like? The template doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. What matters is that you get it in writing. And what I'm showing you here on the screen, literally on the left, are the Word pages out of the fundraising template that I use when I write fundraising plans for clients. The one on the right is an Excel sheet that I used the last year that I was at the food bank. And it's a lot of detail of exactly how much I'm going to raise from this, that, and the other. So it doesn't really matter. What I have for you in the handouts, if you go, whoops, I went to the wrong page. Go over and look at this. It's called my summary calendar template. Use this. If you don't have anything else to use this. It's pretty cool. You can see it's just a grid where you can think about activities by category and by month so that you can at least get an overview of what you're going to do during the year. What's nice about this is you can plug in your grant deadlines, the event that you want to do, what you're going to do to take care of your individual donors or ask your individual donors. You got a place for major gifts. You got a place to put all this in. And then if you start to see that you've got 6 activities planned for February, you can adjust that. You can move some things around, plan for things ahead of time. That actually is something that happened to me when I created this document. I was dying in February. And once I stopped and put it on paper, I saw why. I had 3 grants due in early February. I was trying to get a newsletter out. I was planning for an event in March, and it seems like there was something else. And I went, well, no wonder I'm dying. Well, next year I'm moving the newsletter, and I'm going to start earlier on the grants. I'm going to get some help with the event, and it made my life so much easier. So, but you can't see that stuff if you don't write it down. So if all you do is use this, and then on another piece of paper, just start to jot down what you're going to do to make all those things happen, you'll be fine. You'll be totally fine. Now, there's some other handouts in here that you can have a look at. I didn't really go over absolutely everything. They'll be super helpful for you. The point is, get it in writing. Just write it down. Now, here's a sample using that summary calendar. And this actually is from Horsehaven. So I want to show you just a couple of things, because you do want to balance how often you're asking with how often you're just communicating and doing warm touches. And what I've done here is I've put the asks in green and the communication warm touch in yellow. Now what you should see is there's a whole lot more yellow than green, and that's the way you want it. You want to have way more stuff that you're doing to make your donors feel good and to take care of those geese so that the golden eggs will keep coming. If all you're doing is asking, that's going to wear people out. They're going to get really tired, and they're going to stop giving. So this is really the gist of the plan. We did a lot of prep work. There you see there's a ton of prep work before you start figuring out your strategy. You put this all together. If you balance it right, if you choose things because they move you towards your goal, if you choose things that are going to help play to your strengths, if you choose things because it makes sense for your organization, and you balance the asks with the warm touches and the communications, you're going to be fine. You're going to be just fine. You're going to be able to go out in the world, work your plan, and you can get out of that reactive mode, out of the crisis du jour. Life is going to get easier. Now, yeah, there's a whole lot more detail that you can put on here, and actually have an action plan. Let me give you that one as well. I've got a 90-day action plan that I just created, and we'll make sure you get that too, so that you can start to put some wheels on some of this plan and on where you want to go with it. So we've covered a lot of ground today. What have you learned? What are you taking away from this today? I'd love for you to go back through your notes and pick one thing that you can do in the coming week just to get started on your written fundraising plan. Remember that if you don't take some action on what you're learning, you're never going to move very far with any of this. So you want to go back through your notes, pick one thing that you can do just to get started, put it on your calendar, schedule time for it, and then get busy. Now here's what's coming next. We are right at the top of the hour. So next week, of course, we don't have anything going on. We have the Inspired Fundraising Retreat, which, by the way, if you guys want, you still got time to either get a ticket for in-person or a live stream ticket. We'll be live streaming the event. You still got time to do that. The next week, we're going to actually skip. So normally we have webinars the first and third Thursday. We're going to push next week's out to the 23rd. And our topic is budgets for small growing nonprofits. And that's going to be led by our grant writers here on staff, Leah Holt and Susan Caldwell, who both know more about budgets than anybody I've ever seen. When you want to talk about some conversations that will curl some people's hair, yeah, get these two talking about budgets and whew. So they're going to be leading the next one. And again, the Facebook group is always open. So if you ever have a question for any of us, you got want us to give you some ideas, use it. That's what it's there for. All right, that is it for today, you all. Thank you so much for being here. I know there's a lot of other places you could be and places you could spend your time, and I'm really grateful that you decided to jump in on our live webinar today and learn about putting the written fundraising plan in place to fuel your success. All right, take care, everybody. I'll see you guys again next time. Bye now.